its meaning was rather different. The best illustration of the change that I'm aware of offered Alan Finkielkraut, French guy, in his famous book, The Defeat of the Mind. Quote, "Communism was experiencing an irreversible decline, but what died along with it was not totalitarian thinking, but the idea of a world common to all people. Marx had definitely lost, but to Joseph the Master." In such a world, all types of nationalism and all protections of national interests serve as an effective technique of indoctrination that poses a huge threat to democracy both in the developed industrial countries and in the developing world. When we turn, finally, to the problem of nationalism in relation to Christianity and Orthodoxy, the relevancy of the issue seems self-evident. There is a common perception that Orthodoxy is almost inseparably tied with national identities. Who could deny, for example, that Orthodox Church, unlike Western Christianity, is composed of the so-called national churches? It seems enough to point to the Russian, Romanian, or Serbian Orthodox Church to prove that. Are they not all churches of the Russian, Romanian, and Serbian people? Are they not organized along national and ethnic lines? Do they not play a significant role in the formation, preservation, and affirmation of the national identity and state of each particular nation? This understanding of orthodoxy has become quite common, both in countries where orthodoxy is the dominant and traditional faith and outside them, among the general population as well as among the scholars. I can give you some examples later. Nationalism, especially in its ethnophiletic and statist manifestations, is certainly one of the greatest problems that the Orthodox Church faces today. But it is a problem, not a regular state of affairs. It is not something that can be justified or affirmed by Orthodox theology and ecclesiology. The whole tragedy of the present situation, especially in terms of using the national or ethnic principles in church organization, becomes apparent in the countries where Orthodoxy is neither traditional nor dominant faith, in Western Europe and North America. Here we find very often Serbian, Russian, Romanian, or Greek churches existing as parallel structures in the same city. These parishes are under the jurisdiction of Serbian, Russian, Romanian, or Greek bishops who also belong to their national councils of bishops in their respective countries. From the point of view of the Orthodox ecclesiology, this practice is entirely irregular and cannot be seen as a normal or normative state of affairs in Orthodox. It merely represents an unfortunate result of particular historical circumstances that must be overcome. The problem of nationalism in Christianity is only one aspect of the much broader problem of how to articulate the relations between Christianity and the state and between the church and the nation. This problem seems to have existed from the earliest periods of the Christian faith, when Christians had to conceptualize their relation to the Roman Empire, both in the pre- and post-Constantine era. This is not a minor problem, since the faith of the Christians and their message to the world is not political or ideological in its nature. Christ did not come to establish any specific form of government, since his, quote, kingdom is not of this world. We find that in John 18. But to offer a new mode of existence based upon love. Christian faith is first and foremost eschatological in its character. Christians proclaim the kingdom of God which is to come. How can we then relate these eschatological expectations with the concerns of this world and its preoccupation with earthly power, domination, and wealth. Already from the time when Christianity became an official ideology of the Roman Empire and the Church became one of the major social and political institutions, we find attempts to justify certain power structures by specific interpretations of Christianity. The Byzantine Empire is a very instructive case, which is still, in the eyes of many Orthodox people, a prototype of the church-state relations. As John McGuckin convincingly shows in his study The Legacy of the 13th Apostle, Origins of the East Christian Conception of Church and State Relations, quote, "There never was a single coherent Byzantine political theology," end of quote. The reason for that is that it is impossible to elevate a coherent political theology on the basis of biblical evidence. During the medieval period, one can find attempts to link very closely church and state. On the contrary, however, we also see attempts to keep them apart as two distinct realities that should not be confused. I'm trying to skip some parts to make it shorter. However, there is sufficient material to show attempts of prominent authors to construct narratives in which orthodoxy and church become useful ideological tools in the hands of the state authorities and for the purpose of imperial ideologies, including military interventions. Probably the most explicit expression of the state-church ideology we find in Emperor Justin's writings, quote, "The priesthood and imperium do not differ very greatly, nor are sacred things so very different from those of public and common interest." End of quote. In the classical Symphonia doctrine, as Justinian saw it, quote again, "The king is blessed by God. He ensures the holiness of the priests who in turn pray for the welfare of his kingdom, so that his throne shall endure, but only as long as his sons keep the covenant and observe the laws which I have commanded." So, the so-called symphony seems to be so attractive to many authors that it is repeated in the writings of some contemporary Orthodox authors too. An interesting view in this respect expressed Father Mikhail Askov, who explicitly connects imperial policies of the Eastern Roman Empire and the Orthodox faith. Quote, "Christian Romans believed they dwelt in an empire which should encompass the whole world because that empire was founded on a religion intended for all men. As a member of historical fact, the claims of the empire depended upon the truth of the Christian faith. The loss of that faith meant the loss of any claim to the empire." End of quote. On the other hand, we also witness to the attempt to see in the very position of the emperor in the Byzantine Empire, but also later, a liturgical function. Among contemporary authors, Vladimir Moss went so far in advocating the priestly function of the Orthodox emperor that he even claimed, quote, "From the point of view of the confession of the faith, the emperor has a more prominent and critical position even than the leading bishops. For everyone, both inside and outside the empire, looks to him as representing the official faith of the empire." End of quote. Both of these authors are among those who support the Orthodox monarchy as the Orthodox political model, claiming its sacred character. Since I have written about this problem elsewhere, I will only repeat here my conclusion that there are no any valid theological arguments in favor of monarchy as a political model from the Orthodox Christian perspective.